Before I get back to your calls, I want to have a word with Chris Law, the SNP MP for Dundee West, who yesterday in Parliament called for kids and adults who've experienced time in the care system to become a protected group. So for care experience when you're growing up to become a protected characteristic. Good afternoon to you, Chris Law.
Good afternoon, Sheila. Thank you for calling me in today.
I haven't spoken about this on air for ages, either the care experience, but I don't think I've ever spoken about this idea of it becoming a protected characteristic. Tell me why that matters to you so much.
Well, there's several reasons. First of all is that there are a significant percentage of the child population right now who is in some shape or form under corporate care, in other words, state care. That's 3% of children. However, what happens is when they come out of care, legally at 18, you have some really shocking statistics of what happens. So to give you a few, by the age of 21, 50% of all 16 to 21-year-olds are in the criminal justice system. In the adult population of prisons, 25% of all adult prisoners have been in care. 50% go on to experience mental health issues. 70% die prematurely. And the last figure that really shocks me of all is that you're 20 times more likely to be dead by the age of 25 compared with kids from, what we consider a family background. So the odds are they are really stacked against us. And the next part to that is, well, how do you recognise those people? How do you see where they are? And the key thing about a protected characteristic is that you can able to integrate it into policy right across government, whether at local and at national level, and it allows us to identify who these people are. So
for example, would services that they use, because we all use services of all kinds, once we're out in the world, would it be clear to those services that this individual had been in care, had that protected characteristic, and therefore would get particular levels of support that they wouldn't get if they hadn't been?
Absolutely, and there's two sides to that point. Those who've experienced care like myself, I was adopted, I was in residential care, and I've been in foster care. The other side of it is there's a big silence. Many of us don't wish to speak about our youngest part, our most vulnerable part of our lives. So when we become young adults, we would have the support and the recognition that we are there, we're not silent, we're not invisible, we don't need to hide in shame. And I talked about this in Parliament a few years ago, that I've carried all my adult life this kind of dirty stain of shame. And it's hard to speak about it even now as a grown adult. But what's really important to me is when I speak to other care experience leavers, that they recognise that their voice, and too often in society they've not been heard.
And I mean, stop me if you don't want to, but can I ask about that shame just briefly? Is that, where does it come from? Is it about being left, is abandoned in some way? Is it about not being wanted? Is it about not feeling worthless because you don't have a family full time?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I mean, people end up in care for a whole host of reasons, and they don't always go in at very young age. You can be in and out of care, have different experiences. I personally will put on record here to thank those who looked after me in the times that I needed care. It's really important. There are lots of good experiences out there. I think what's important is that, nevertheless, when you, at 16, 17 years old, when you're going on to start your adult life, if you mention to people that you've been in care, they make judgments based on what they think that means. Well, were you in care because you were reckless as a young person? Is there something about you that's not valuable and
are you from a family that's dangerous in some way, or wild?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And more often than not, in fact, massively more often than not, that's not the case. And most importantly, these are children. These are people who didn't make the choice to be in care. There are people young, vulnerable people who have required it for a whole host of reasons. And I think as a society, it's hugely expensive on our social care system not to look after those people beyond the age of 16, because at the moment, on average, it's costing £1.2 million per care experienced person, and yet the statistics of them being able to make success of their lives, have family, go on and live a fulfilling life is really difficult. So I'd like to see that changed, and the protected characteristic part underpins all the other measures we can do.
And while no life should be boiled down to what their economic value and contribution is, everybody wants to thrive, don't they? All of us want to thrive. And I know that, I was fortunate enough to grow up with a family, 2 parents, siblings, aunties and uncles supporting us and all the rest of it, friends, parents being around as well. I've lent on that all my life, not just when I was 18, 20, 21, 22. There have been times in life where you just need your family, don't you? You need them again, and then you need them again, and then you need them again. And if there's a break in that and you don't have access to them, well, that's really hard.
And you've hit the hammer completely on the head, because that is it. We go back to our families time and again throughout our lives, and for many people that's just not possible. So they need to have that support network. They need to have that little lift in life that gives them the chance to reach their potential. Everybody wants to feel loved. Everybody wants to feel respected, and everyone wants to have the opportunity to reach their potential. And I think this would be an incredible step forward for the UK government to take this on board and, in actual fact, lead in the world, because the Scottish Government have done lots on this. They've brought the Keep the Promise campaign, which is a promise to young care experienced children, young people, to get into education, to get into meaningful work, to build a life. But what the protected characteristic does, it makes it easier for all organisations to not only recognise some of the challenges, but also to allow those people themselves to say, hey, this is who I am. This is how I'd like to contribute. Let's do that together. And it allows that partnership to develop.
Well, I wish you success with it. Let's talk again as this proceeds. Thanks very much indeed, Chris. Chris Law, SNP MP for Dundee West. More of your calls on Keir Starmer in just a moment.